Opposition MPs, as Bartosz Chegar knows, not satisfied. They say the government is ramming through these changes without their support. Can they find any room for compromise? Will they take that open door? Join me from the foyer of the House of Commons. Conservative Deputy House Leader Chris Warkentin and NDP House Leader Murray Rankin. Okay, you fellows were listening in there. Yeah. So Chris Warkentin, let's start with you. The government says they've tried to talk to you. Their door is open. You guys aren't interested in having a conversation, so now they're just going to do what they campaigned on. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's interesting. I think Bartosz was very clear with you that they intend to fulfill some promises and not other promises. What they're going to do and what they've committed to us is that they're going to jam this down our throat, and they're going to bring this to Canadians and force Canadians to capitulate to their demands, if we like it or not. That has never been done, or most governments prior to this, all the way back to Confederation, never engaged in this type of reform of the House of Commons standing orders. Right. This government is taking a different approach. They're going to ram it down our throats and Canadians' throats if we like it or not. It's interesting that she keeps talking about a conversation. Well, I can tell you that I've learned that in having a conversation, you have to have people talking and then responding and listening to the other side. This minister has refused to listen to anything that any opposition member has said in this.
The hypocrisy that I pointed out to Minister Chatter, I can also put to you guys. If they don't fulfill promises, then aren't you going to ride them? These are 5 things that they promised Canadians they would do. They're just trying to implement them. Why can't they just go ahead and do it?
Can I go on that one, Rosie?
Yeah, go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, this isn't like a budget matter where the government gets a mandate, runs on it, does it on its own, and gets a vote through. This is changing the rules of the House. There's a very different category of promises. They don't have the right to tell Canadians we're going to fix the standing orders to suit them better. Why
not? If they put that on the table, why not?
It's a parliamentary responsibility. The standing orders are part of the rules that apply to all members of Parliament, not just the government.
It's interesting. We've often said that if they're going to change the way that democracy works, everybody should get a voice, and that means that every Canadian should get a voice through their elected officials. That has been the case for pretty much every single government back to Confederation. It was the case for more recently with Chrétien and the Harper governments, both including all members and including a real conversation that really gave veto powers to pretty much every recognized party in the House of Commons to any changes. This minister basically has said, we're going to make these changes. She calls it a conversation. What she did is she slammed down her marching orders. She said, you can talk about that, but at the end of the day, we're going to get what we want if you like it or not.
Okay, so answer this, Murray. I'll go back to you, Murray Rankin. Yeah. So they've walked away from some stuff. So let's be fair. They did walk back from some of it. On the 5 things that they're going to push forward on the motion, what to you is the most egregious part of that for democracy, your job, whatever part of that you want to explain to us?
Sure. Well, leaving aside the process, which we've talked about, and and I'm really not that concerned about Prime Minister's question period. They've already shown they don't need to change the rules to do that. That's really not a big issue. Prorogation is something that Mr. Harper did, which was egregious. All they're going to do is do a report under their proposed changes. You know what? We just prorogue Parliament and do a report afterward. That's the other one. Secondly, omnibus bills. Rosie, it's so ironic that we're tomorrow or the next day going to go to a debate on what? An omnibus bill that the government is bringing in. It amends the Judges Act. It pushes together artificial intelligence bill and another bill, and all of these things, almost 30 bills. The government is doing an omnibus bill, and they don't seem to have a problem with that. We have a problem with that.
Right. Okay, and on your front there, Chris Warkentin, what is the part of this that they're going to forge ahead with that to you is most limiting for you to do your job?
Well, they're going to reform the estimates process, which is really the ability for opposition MPs to scrutinize the government spending in the normal format. What they're going to do is change that without the consent of the opposition parties. Quite frankly, the only people that need the estimates process and the way that it's currently structured is those people outside of cabinet. So that means opposition parties. They're going to reform that and change the way that operates without the consent of the parties and the people that are actually being affected. We will not have the same ability to scrutinize the government spending as we currently have if the government marches forward with these changes. We would like to constructively give ideas as to what would better assist us in doing our jobs and holding them to account. They don't want to hear about that. What they're looking for is ways to make their jobs easier. And so most of these provisions have always been about making life easier for for the Liberal Party.
And Rosie, it's just not right to suggest that her door is always open and, you know, we can, come on, the truth is we want to work with them. We gave them an exit ramp. We said, why don't you do what Mr. Chrétien did and get a bunch of people from all the parties sitting around with a deputy speaker, roll up our sleeves and do the job. They didn't want to go there. They want to ram it through with opposition united against them. That doesn't help democracy.
Okay, last point on this, the Prime Minister's question period thing, that gets a lot of attention. Is that really a big deal to either of you? I mean, they say that he will show up other days, that he will, you know, there'll be that one day set to you, but is that really such a big deal? It does appear to work in the UK. So is that just one of those things that seems to be a flash in the pan, but you could probably live with?
In this case, that's the bauble in this entire discussion. They keep talking about this question period, this Prime Minister's question period, that somehow they need the rules to change in order for that to happen. We've now seen the Prime Minister do it twice with no changes to the standing order. So clearly there's no limiting factor in him doing that without changing the standing orders. It's simply a distraction so that they can push through some of these more draconian measures through. But I can tell you the one thing that's very concerning is today the Prime Minister moved back on parliamentary convention. We had a leader in the House, Thomas Mulcair, ask several questions in the House of Commons. It has always been customary that the Prime Minister responds to leaders in the House. I can tell you that in my 11 years, the vast majority of times that leaders of parties stand up to ask questions, the Prime Minister will respond. Today, the Prime Minister refused to answer any questions that he wasn't. So when he says that yes, he'll be around and he'll answer questions other days, I don't believe it.
And it's question period, not answer period.
Murray, before I get to you, Chris Warkentin, I do have to point out, though, there will be lots of Canadians watching who know that the Conservative government put all sorts of things inside Omnibus, hid stuff in them bills, that you invoked closure when you didn't like things, that you limited debate. It's not like things were going smooth and happy when you guys were in government.
You know what's unique about that is even in spite of all those criticisms that you've just leveled, some of which I disagree with, but you've leveled those criticisms. Stephen Harper had a process to change the standing orders. He gave consent to all parties to veto any changes. The Liberals did it, and they vetoed some of those changes. What's interesting is we now have Liberal backbenchers that are opposing their own government's efforts to ram these through. I can tell you, there's members of every party in this House of Commons that believes that there's a problem with the current process.
Okay, Murray Rankin, last word to you, sir.
Well, I would love to get this better for Canadians. I think that this push for efficiency, the government wants to call it, is all very well, but we can't lose sight of the big picture. And Rosie, the big picture is they're doing this unilaterally. Canadians have to understand how un-Canadian this process has become.
Okay, listen, I think all of you, including Ms. Chagger, did a good job of explaining why this matters to Canadians, because I think it's one of those things we might get lost in, but I appreciate you explaining how it affects your job and why it matters. Thank you both. Chris Warkentin, Murray Rankin, good to see you, fellas.
Thank you very much.